What if you could run an entire society perfectly? No waste, no shortages, just pure scientific efficiency. That was the incredible promise of a brand new field of science back in the mid-20th century. But for the one country you'd think would jump at the chance, the Soviet Union, this dream looked a whole lot more like a nightmare at first. So let's get into the fascinating and pretty contradictory story of Soviet cybernetics. Okay, but here's the real head-scratcher that kicks this whole thing off. Why in the world would the Soviet Union, a state literally built on central planning and absolute top-down control, turn around and attack a new science of control? It just doesn't add up, right? It should have been a match made in heaven. The answer, it turns out, gets at a really deep conflict right at the heart of the Soviet system.
All right, so to figure this out, we've got to first ask, what even was this revolutionary new science?
It was called cybernetics. And honestly, the main idea behind it is pretty simple. It's all about feedback loops. Think about the thermostat on your wall. It senses the room getting a little chilly, that's the feedback, and then it tells the furnace to kick on, that's the control. Well, the big idea with cybernetics was that this same basic principle could explain and manage, well, pretty much everything. Machines, animals, and yeah, even a country's entire economy. So if it's basically just a fancy thermostat, what was the big deal? Why was this seen as so dangerous? Well, the problem wasn't with the technology itself. It was a deep philosophical clash with the Soviet system. And this slide really lays it all out. Soviet planning was a one-way street. Moscow gave the orders, and everyone else was expected to follow them. Period. It was super rigid, super top-down. But cybernetics? That's a two-way conversation. It relies on information flowing from the bottom back up to the top through those feedback loops, which lets the whole system adapt. And that implies that information is distributed, that there's some autonomy. And those ideas were a huge no-no in the Soviet model.
So you see, this wasn't really a fight about technology at all. It was a full-blown philosophical war. Early Soviet critics argued that cybernetics was too mechanistic. They were basically saying, hey, you can't reduce the incredible complexity of human society to some simple machine. They worried it clashed with the official state philosophy, dialectical materialism, which said history moves forward because of class struggle, not because of some impartial, self-regulating computer system. It wasn't the science they hated, it was what the science implied about how the world works.
But then, everything flipped on its head. In this stunning turnaround, after years of being suspicious, the official Soviet position did a complete 180. Just look at how fast this happened. In 1952, cybernetics is basically public enemy number one. But boom, just 2 years later, they're already starting to rethink things. By the mid-50s, you've got major articles arguing that, wait a minute, maybe this could actually strengthen socialism. And by the 1960s, it's not just accepted, it's official. They're building entire institutes for it. I mean, that is an unbelievably fast comeback. And once it got that official seal of approval, the dream got big. I mean, really big. The new goal was to use the power of cybernetics to create the perfect, most efficient socialist state the world had ever seen. Seriously, the ambition here was just breathtaking. The plan was, step 1, create a huge network of automated data centers all across the country. Step 2, link them all together. And step 3, use powerful algorithms to manage every single resource perfectly. We are talking, quite literally, about putting the entire Soviet economy on autopilot. It's the stuff of science fiction. But you know how it goes. Big dreams often hit a wall when they meet the real world. And this one was definitely no exception. So why did it stall out? Well, a few big things got in the way. For one, the sheer scale was just mind-boggling. The Soviet economy was just too massive, too complex to really model. Then you had the human element. Powerful government ministries weren't exactly thrilled about handing over their control to a machine. On top of that, they just didn't have the raw computing power they needed. And to top it all off, the scientists themselves couldn't even agree on the best way to actually do it. So when you look back at the whole story, it's clear this isn't a simple case of good idea versus bad idea. It's way more complicated. It's this really fascinating dance between a revolutionary new science and a powerful, unyielding state. And this quote really sums it up perfectly. The history here wasn't just a straight line from no to yes. Instead, it was this messy, negotiated process that was shaped by politics, by priorities, and just by the sheer practical challenge of running a huge country.
It's a great reminder that science never happens in a vacuum, you know? It's always getting tangled up with the real world.
Which leaves us with a pretty big question for today, doesn't it? When you think about our world with things like artificial intelligence or genetic engineering, how do our own institutions, our governments, our companies decide what's a threat and what's an opportunity? As this history shows us, that line can get incredibly blurry, and the answer is almost never as simple as it seems.